Hi, I'm Greg Hunter, and this is the weekly news wrap-up for Friday, January 3rd, 2014, the first weekly news wrap-up of the brand new year. And hey, with the official rollout of Obamacare, I have to say Obamacare is the lead story. You're going to see Obamacare in the news a lot in 2014. And here's the headline. Here's the way they're spinning it. Healthcare signups top 1 million. We're talking about the government exchanges here. If you add in, the Medicaid people, it's probably top in a couple of million people. Probably a couple of million folks in Obamacare. But that's not really the big headline. I think the big headline is how many people have turned negative on Obamacare. Actually, the majority of people have turned negative on Obamacare. A recent CNN poll, 63% now say that they think they'll pay more for health insurance because of Obamacare. Here's the biggest headline. Young people, and that's what you really need to make this fly. Young people who are paying into the system who aren't going to be taxing the system, aren't going to be using the system. And according to a brand new Harvard poll, 56% of young people 18 to 29 are giving it the big thumbs down to Obamacare. Big thumbs down. Not going to do it. Going to pay the fine or the tax. This is what this system sorely needs. They don't need a million, of people who have pre-existing conditions who can't afford to pay health care and are getting a subsidy. That's not what they need to make this fly. What they need are young, healthy people who aren't going to be using the health care to be paying into it. It's your duty. But, as I've said before, young people are young. They're not stupid. With the pre-existing condition clause, hey, if I need it, I'll just go get it. But I'm not going to pay $100 and $200 and $300 a month. I'm not paying that. Young people aren't going to pay that. That's not going to happen. Which means this is going to be a continuing disaster, a continuing drain on the U.S. economy. They ought to call it the Unaffordable Care Act. I've had many people come on my site on YouTube and on usawatchdog.com and say, I'm paying, 50%, 100%, 200% more. My deductibles have gone way up. My copays have gone way up. Of course, the premiums have gone way up. I'm paying more and getting less, not to mention the fact that this is being run by the Internal Revenue Service. The policing of this is the IRS, which I find appalling. That the government is controlling my health care, everybody's health care, and then all the taxes with the Obamacare law. Tons of new taxes with this. This is the biggest tax increase in history. And it's going to drag the economy that is already, by all objective evidence, pretty weak. It's going to drag it under. You take somebody who's going to have to spend $600 or $700 or $800 a month more, and you're going to take that much every month out of the economy from now until, going forward? Please. That's going to be tens of billions of real dollars that are not going to be circulating in the economy. They're going to be sucked out of the economy with this Obamacare scheme. And the Democrats are doubling down on this. They are delusional. They think this is going to be a winner for them in 2014. If it was such a winner, why is the president putting off the employer mandate? I'll tell you why. Because the people who have health care through their companies, well, they're going to get a big bill. They're going to be told, hey, we're going to drop you and push you into the government exchange, or, your health care is going to be another $200, $300, $400, $500 a month, and we have to cover, birth control, we have to cover abortions, we have to cover free this and no copay that, and all these things are going to have to be covered, and it costs money. People are going to either pay more and get less at their company, or the companies are just going to throw their hands in the air and say, forget it, I'm done. Sorry, we didn't do this. We're not going to provide health care anymore. Go to the exchanges, which I think is what the Democrats wanted always. They wanted to kill the private industry and have a single-payer system. And this is working exactly the way they wanted it to work. They mistimed the political fallout, though. And the political fallout with the employer mandate is going to absolutely cause havoc in the healthcare industry. People are going to be angry. 2014, this is going to be one giant loser issue for the Democrats. I'm not a big fan of the Republicans either, but as I've said before, they didn't vote for this. They have at least got that going for them, which is why I've been talking about this new buzzword, income inequality. we need to have, higher, minimum wages. Your job is really a social program. It's not really a job. Employers should be paying more because that's socially responsible. I'm telling you, government setting the price of anything, in this case wages, has always been a disaster. Look what's going on with Obamacare. They're basically setting the price of health insurance by saying your plan has to have this. Well, that costs X amount of dollars. The government setting the price of anything is a disaster. People should get paid upon the market forces, supply and demand, and your skill level. If you want a better job, get more skills. Another thing they're going to bring up is this, that's coming up is, unemployment benefits, $25 billion. And this is one of my pet peeves, and I'll tell you this again. You don't hear the liberal Democrats or the conservatives, you don't hear either side of the aisle saying, we could pay for this if we just cut off the banker bailouts for 1 month. I mean, that's $35 billion a month at this point. One former Federal Reserve official, remember him? He testified or wrote an op-ed piece in the New York Times saying it was the biggest backdoor banker bailout in history, this quantitative easing. Hey, let's stop the banker bailouts for 1 month. Actually, I think we ought to stop the banker bailouts 100% all the way, period. We are delusional if we think this is going to continue and end happily with this 75 billion, at least temporarily, a month that the Fed is printing out of thin air to prop up the economy. Did you hear about the New York Times so-called investigation into the Benghazi incident, 9/11/12, where 4 Americans were killed, including our ambassador? Well, now it seems like after months and months of investigation, the New York Times says, hey, it really was that anti-Islamic video. That's been roundly and soundly, completely defeated as an argument that it was that video. It was not that video. The other thing, the big point that the New York Times article brought up, that, these guys, this group down there wasn't related to Al-Qaeda. Really? Even the Pentagon says this attack was Al-Qaeda related. I mean, there were many sources that I've been telling you about for the last couple of years, even before when Gaddafi was under attack, by NATO and all these sorties, and then we had actually taken battlefield commanders who were Al-Qaeda and also other Al-Qaeda operatives and put them into Libya. Benghazi was their capital. That's their point of operation. I mean, this big investigation by the New York Times didn't talk to a guy by the name of Eric Nordstrom. He did security for places like Benghazi. And when he testified under oath this past year, Nordstrom said, when it came to the question of Benghazi, he said Benghazi ranked, quote, higher critical and threat categories related to political violence and terrorism. High in political violence or terrorism. They don't talk about a video. And as I've said, the Pentagon even says this was an Al-Qaeda related attack. And this investigation didn't include the Pentagon's assessment. Many people have come out. There are many different sources that say that it was linked to Al-Qaeda. Many different sources. Gregory Hicks, he was the number 2 in Libya. He was in Tripoli. He was actually on the phone in Tripoli to the White House during the attacks. He's the number 2 for the State Department in Libya. He's on the phone to the White House. When they asked him about this video, this anti-Islamic video causing all this, and he said, quote, when I heard that, I was stunned and embarrassed. Stunned and embarrassed that the State Department brought up that this video was, started this attack. This was some sort of extemporaneous attack. That's another thing the investigation said. It wasn't very meticulously planned. Really? So when you come and you protest, you bring rocket launchers and semi-automatic weapons and mortars, and you go to attack 2 different locations. The CIA headquarters was also attacked. What? Really? I was a former investigative correspondent at ABC and CNN. And this is pretty shoddy work, to say the least. Months and months of investigation. You didn't talk to people who testified under oath who were there. Really? What? And this is a months and months of investigation on the ground, and there are all kinds of allegations about how this was really a gun-running scheme, and the CIA and the United States was running guns out of Libya and into Syria to help the rebels in Syria. I don't know what the motivation was for this, but I think the New York Times lost credibility. To me, it looks like a whitewashing of a story that reflects poorly on the President of the United States and the then Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton. It was an epic disaster. And I think they knew all about it, or they know a lot more than what they're saying. They know about that. Speaking of the Middle East, I just want to kind of bring up this just to show you that the Syria thing is spilling in to other countries. Other countries are getting involved in a big way, and now it's starting to bubble out in the press. And here is this here. Saudi Arabia offers $3 billion grant to arm Lebanon. Now, Saudi Arabia now is arming the other side. And let me tell you about how it's spilling into other countries. And here's the headline here that says, Syrian jets bomb Lebanese hills. So Syrian jets are now bombing Lebanese hills. They've bombed places in southern Turkey, which incidentally Turkey is a mess. Their government is under some real pressure, real problems with the prime minister and the government, and their currency is imploding. The Turkish currency is doing poorly, which will always add instability to a country. This so-called civil war has claimed the lives of more than 120,000 Syrians. There are a couple of million probably refugees that are spewing out of Syria trying to get away from the violence. And this is in no way, shape, or form ending or calming down. All the headlines and all the reports are showing it is widening in conflict. And when it widens, it won't just involve places like Lebanon. It could involve countries like Russia and the United States and Iran. And Iran is involved in terms of Hezbollah there. Al-Qaeda is involved, is a part of the Free Syrian Army. This is an ugly situation, and it's nowhere near any kind of an end. Speaking of wars and terrorism, terrorists struck in Russia, a couple of different bombing attacks, suicide bombers, killed more than 30 people, injured dozens. This is, of course, just before the Sochi Games, the Winter Olympic Games. This is, not very far away, a few hundred miles away. Russian Prime Minister Vladimir Putin says that he plans to annihilate. He's going to try to annihilate the terrorists. And it just goes to show you that, how desperate and how vicious these people are, them setting off these bombs, and this close to the Olympic Games, the Winter Games, is an ominous sign. I hope, in this case, I'm pulling for Vladimir Putin. I hope he can stop the terrorists and keep our athletes, while they're over there, safe. Well, get ready for the bail-ins in Europe. Out according to famed economist Martin Armstrong, and he thinks it'll be much higher than the talked about 10%. It's approved by the International Monetary Fund, the IMF. Where's the IMF headquartered? Washington, D.C. If you think that bail-ins are not coming to the United States of America, when we have another meltdown, even Gordon Brown, the former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, the UK, wrote an op-ed piece late in 2013 in the New York Times saying that we're stumbling towards a crash. A crash is coming. And when banks get in trouble, they're going to take depositors' money. That's the whole bail-in concept. And Martin Armstrong thinks it'll be much more than 10%. Many of my guests have also said the bail-ins are coming. You have been forewarned. Hopefully you'll be forearmed. Yields on 10-year Treasury notes are floating around 3%. And, when you keep in mind that 3% doesn't sound like a whole lot of money, well, they've almost doubled in a year or so. I mean, what were they, at 1.4, 1.6 in May of 2013? They were 1.63%, and then all of a sudden, boing, I mean, they're 3%. Now, keep in mind, my friend Greg Manarino says it's not so much that they're 3%, it's how fast they got there. Not a very long time. My point in reflecting on this 3% 10-year Treasury yield, which, 30-year money is set off of, 30-year mortgages are set off of, is that, wow, it went, it almost doubled, and they spent $85 billion a month. I know they just recently cut that back, but $85 billion a month, $1 trillion a year. This is not what they wanted. That's the stated plan by the Federal Reserve, is to print this money and suppress interest rates. It's not my imagination. This is not what they wanted. Rob Kirby came on and said, in the last 6 months, we don't know about the fourth quarter, but in the last 6 months, they put on, according to the comptroller of the currency, $12 trillion in interest rate swaps. This is not, they hold down interest rates. This is not what the powers wanted. They didn't want to see interest rates rise. And yet, they rose anyway, which shows you the Fed can't completely control every aspect of what is going on. The Exchange Tradable Stabilization Fund cannot control every aspect, every nook and cranny of the economy. Greg Manarino says, hey, listen, here's what's coming for 2014. Money is going to flow into suppressed assets. And what's been suppressed since 2011? That'd be gold and silver. Manarino predicts gold and silver is going to have a giant turnaround in 2014. Other people like Eric Sprott, I've interviewed him, and other folks are also forecasting that very same prediction, that gold and silver will be facing a big turnaround. It doesn't mean it can't go down in the near term. The suppression racket is a big racket. All markets are manipulated. The stock market up, bond prices up, interest rates down, gold prices down. Everything's manipulated. But the manipulation game appears, at least according to the sources that I'm hearing from and seeing, appears to be ending. They're just running out of gold. That's the way I see it. I'm Greg Hunter. Thank you for supporting USA Watchdog in 2013. Hopefully you'll be supporting USA Watchdog in 2014. Thank you for using the donations button. Thank you very much for making the comments that makes the site rich and full of life with smart people that come on and comment. Thank you very much. I'm Greg Hunter. Have a nice weekend.